In the blistering summer of 1887, when the sun hung low like a molten brand above the scarred mesas of Redwater territory, the quiet rancher named Cole Ransom believed he had finally earned his peace until the night a trembling woman staggered onto his land, her dress torn, her wrists bruised, and her eyes carrying a secret capable of burning the entire town to ash. Her name, she whispered, was Leora Vale, a newcomer whose presence had stirred whispers since the first step she took off the stagecoach, and when Cole lifted her into his arms and carried her inside his cabin, he could feel the danger she dragged behind her like a shadow with teeth. She said little at first, only that someone had pursued her through the canyon, and that she had escaped by a miracle. And though Cole was a quiet man, he was no stranger to cruelty. He'd seen it done to cattle, to settlers, to anyone too weak to resist the greed that ruled men out here. But when Leora finally looked up at him with shaking hands pressed to her chest and whispered, "There is something I must never tell, something forbidden. If I speak it, the whole town will shake apart." Cole felt the room grow colder despite the suffocating heat outside. That night stretched longer than any winter storm as he fed her, offered her his only clean blanket, and listened to the faint tremble in her breaths while she gathered the courage to reveal the truth that had chased her onto his land. Redwater was no ordinary frontier. Its soil was rich with silver, veins hidden beneath the desert floor. Veins the powerful Blackthorn Mining Company would kill to control. And Leora, as Cole soon realized, wasn't simply a woman running from danger. She was the danger, because she carried knowledge and proof that the company's riches weren't earned but stolen, and worse, that the town's own lawman, Sheriff Marcus Hale, was helping them bury every witness who tried to speak. Cole's jaw tightened as she explained how she'd been working as a bookkeeper for the mining company, discovering ledger pages soaked in lies, payoffs and murders, disguised as accidents, and when she tried to confront the sheriff, his answer was sending 3 men to silence her forever. The rancher sat still, absorbing every word as the cicadas screamed outside and the desert wind clawed at the windows. But when she whispered that the sheriff planned something even darker, the forced seizure of every ranch on the outskirts, including Cole's own land, his veins ran cold because his quiet life had just ended. The next morning, Redwater awakened to gunfire echoing across the far ridge, a warning shot from the sheriff's men who had tracked Leora to Cole's ranch. And while Cole had always avoided conflict, preferring the company of cattle over men, something inside him snapped into purpose. As he strapped on a revolver he hadn't touched in years, Leora begged him to walk away, saying the truth she carried was too dangerous to fight for, but Cole only tipped his hat and said, "Truth deserves a spine to stand behind." They fled through the brush as the sheriff's posse thundered toward the ranch, dust rising like ghosts behind their horses, and as they hid in the ravine, Leora clutching the leather-bound ledger that could destroy the most powerful men in the territory, Cole realized that protecting her wasn't only about justice, it was about finally standing against the corruption that had poisoned Redwater long before she arrived. When night fell once more, and they reached the abandoned Spanish mission at the edge of the desert, Leora finally confessed the full truth. The mine wasn't just hiding theft, it was hiding bodies. Men buried alive in collapsed tunnels, their deaths covered up to avoid shutting down the operation. The sheriff was preparing to eliminate the remaining workers who knew too much, blaming the deaths on Apache raids, a lie that could ignite a war and wipe out innocent people. Cole's fists clenched around the firelight, his mind already forming a plan that would put him at war with the most feared men in the territory. But just as he stood to leave the mission, Leora grabbed his wrist, her eyes wide with terror, and whispered, "What I'm telling you is forbidden. Cole, if we expose them, they won't just kill us, they'll burn this town to the ground." Cole looked at her with steady determination and said, "Then let it shake. Let the truth shake every wall they've built." Outside, a coyote howled, the sound rising like an omen across the sand. And deep within Redwater, the sheriff received word that Cole Ransom was sheltering the woman who could ruin them all. The storm had begun. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 will continue immediately from here when you say continue. Dawn crawled over the desert like a wounded animal as Cole Ransom saddled his horse at the abandoned mission, the sky bruised purple and gold, while Leora clutched the ledger to her chest as though it were the last piece of her soul. Both of them knew that by sunrise, every gunman in Redwater would be hunting them, not just for the truth they carried, but for daring to challenge the empire built on blood and silence. Cole's ranch, once a quiet corner of his life, now smoldered behind him, the sheriff's men having set it ablaze in the night to send a message: surrender the woman or be buried with her. But Cole had made his choice the moment she whispered her forbidden truth. And as they rode toward town, the wind whipping dust into their eyes, he could feel in his bones that today would splinter Redwater open like a rotten beam. They reached the old railroad bridge above the canyon, a place known for ambushes, and indeed, 3 riders blocked their way, armed and smirking, but Cole was faster. His revolver flashed twice, knocking one rider into the dust and sending the others scrambling, giving him and Leora enough space to vanish into the rocks before reinforcements arrived. Leora trembled after the gunfire, tears streaking down her cheeks, whispering that she'd never meant for anyone to die, that she only wanted to expose the wrongs she'd discovered. But Cole told her the truth straight. Evil drew blood first, and survival demanded strength. She had already shown plenty. By noon, Redwater bustled, unaware that its future hung by a thread as Cole and Leora slipped into town through the back trail, hiding behind wagons and smokehouses until they reached the printing shop run by old Jeb Carter, a man half-blind but fully loyal to justice. Jeb listened to their story, flipping through the ledger with trembling fingers, muttering curses as he recognized signatures from powerful men he once trusted, and without hesitation he agreed to print every page and spread the truth across the territory. But before the first sheet could hit the press, the sheriff himself stormed into the shop with 6 men, his cold blue eyes landing on Cole with a quiet fury that chilled the room. "You should have stayed out of this, Ransom," he sneered, drawing his pistol. A standoff ignited between them, and for a heartbeat it seemed as if the entire world inhaled and refused to exhale. Leora, standing behind Cole, whispered, "That is forbidden." No man survives challenging them, but Cole only stepped forward, saying loudly enough for the men outside to hear, "Truth ain't forbidden. Murder is." Chaos erupted. The sheriff fired. Cole dove behind the printing press. Bullets shredded stacks of blank paper, Jeb shouted, and in the confusion Leora sprinted out the back door clutching the ledger, drawing 2 of the sheriff's men after her. Cole crashed through a side window, landing hard in the dirt but rising with gun drawn, chasing Leora's pursuers into the alley where he dropped one and tackled the second, wrestling the outlaw into a trough before knocking him out cold. Meanwhile, the sheriff regrouped his men in the street, screaming for them to fan out and kill the girl before she reached anyone who might listen. But the townsfolk, drawn by the gunfire, began gathering, murmuring, watching, sensing a truth simmering beneath the confrontation. Leora climbed onto an empty wagon by the well, holding up the ledger with trembling courage, shouting that the town had been lied to, used, and sacrificed, that their sons had died in the mines not by accident but by greed, that the sheriff and the mining company had built their fortunes on unmarked graves. At first the crowd hesitated. Fear was a chain that had long bound Redwater, but then old miners, widows, and ranchers began stepping forward, recognizing handwriting, dates, even names of their lost kin inside the ledger. The sheriff, realizing the tide was turning, fired into the air, roaring for everyone to back down, but the townspeople, fueled by years of buried rage, surged in defense of Leora. Cole emerged beside her, blood on his sleeve, revolver raised, declaring that Redwater belonged to its people, not to murderers hiding behind badges or corporate seals. The sheriff ordered his men to shoot, but half of them lowered their guns, unwilling to fire on neighbors. The other half opened fire, triggering a street battle that split the town down the middle as dust clouds rose. Windows shattered and gunshots echoed like thunder. Cole protected Leora, shielding her behind an overturned wagon as they exchanged fire with the last of Hale's loyalists. Jeb joined them with a shotgun, and the townsfolk pushed the sheriff's men back step by step toward the courthouse. Finally, cornered on the steps with his empire collapsing, Sheriff Hale grabbed Leora, pressing a barrel to her throat, snarling that if she spoke one more forbidden word he'd end her life before the town could act. Cole froze, rage coiled in every muscle. But Leora, voice shaking yet unbroken, whispered, "The truth is no longer forbidden. Everyone knows now." And with that, Cole took the shot clean and deadly, dropping Hale where he stood. The street fell silent except for the settling dust and the distant cry of a hawk circling above, as though marking the end of an era. The townspeople freed Leora, cheering her bravery, lifting the ledger high, and by evening every household in Redwater knew the truth that had shaken their world. The mining company fled the territory, hunted by federal agents summoned through Jeb's printed evidence, and Redwater slowly rebuilt itself on honesty rather than fear. Cole rebuilt his ranch with the help of neighbors, though he often joked that Leora's bookkeeping skills kept him more organized than he'd ever been. And as the sun set one quiet evening, Leora stood with Cole on the ridge overlooking the town that had nearly killed her, whispering that she never imagined anyone would risk their life for her truth. Cole tipped his hat, answered softly, "Some truths are worth dying for, but I'd rather live for this one." She smiled, taking his hand, and together they walked, back toward a future no longer forbidden but wide open as the western sky.